Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around, we had a rewatch of The Three Doctors. What was that one about?
Well, the Doctor was being attacked by literally one of the first Time Lords who was in an antimatter dimension black hole. Anyway, the only way to defeat him was for the Time Lords to call the previous two Doctors from various parts of their journey and have him join them. And they took most of UNIT with them this time around, which was kind of funny. And they go and basically, it was a pretty good script. We liked it the first time around, liked it the second time around. Our only real problem with it was the villainous jelly beans.
Yeah, and the fight scene.
Yeah.
So,
but ultimately, they managed to introduce some matter into the antimatter universe and blow it all up, and they all, of course, returned home safely.
Yeah. So, very interesting one. We also, last week, watched a modern Doctor Who episode, which was The Girl in the Fireplace. Can you describe that one, too?
Well, again, that was a lot of fun. You know how much I love the historicals. The Doctor and Rose and
Mickey.
I want to say Benji for some reason. Land on a spaceship, 10,000 years in the future, 30,000 years in the future. Anyway. And the crew has all disappeared, and something odd is going on, and the Doctor sees a young girl through a fireplace, and he talks to her. He says, "Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back." And the next time he comes back, it's like 10 years later for her, and he keeps showing up at various points during her life, only to realize that she is Madame Pompadour, and the machines on the spaceship have run out of ways to fix the spaceship, and they started to literally cannibalize the crew to create all the parts they needed, and hers, for some reason, they thought was the brain that was needed to run the computer, which we learn at the end of the segment is because the spaceship is called the Madame Pompadour.
Right.
I love both of them. Again, other than the weird jelly bean villain Pizza the Hut type things, both were entirely enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, great episodes all around. Today we're moving on to Carnival of Monsters.
Oh dear.
Which is 4 episodes, so we'll watch it all together in this video. Which is interesting. We're not used to 4-parters anymore.
Yeah.
We're so used to doing 3 at a time. So, but we'll do all 4 of these in this video.
The reason I said "oh dear" is the last time we had a serial that had monster in the title. It was the Time Monster.
Yes.
Which parts of it were really good, especially the parts set in ancient Greece. But, Mr. Flappy Bird, whatever he was just, seriously. It's every now and then where the script, even the direction and the actors are let down by a costume or a bit of special effects. And I realize they're on a budget, but again, as a director, the first time I saw the bird costume, I'd say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make sure that he is never seen in full. That we'll see a part of him, we'll see a wing or a claw, and he'll be a blinding white light. But once you see him as just this guy in a bird suit, it loses all credibility.
Yeah, well, and the whole excuse of the budget can only go so far, because we've seen what they can do with a budget. And that's the thing, was it limitation is... This is butchering of the phrase, but limitation just is great for creativity. Like, figure it out. Like, if you have 2 ham sandwiches and a shoelace, you figure out how to make those look really, really good on screen. That's...
Yeah, and what was the villain's name in The Three Doctors?
Omega.
Yeah. Now, his costume, a big, giant, metallic head, and, the robes and everything, that was very good.
Yeah.
But, again, you go from that to Flappy Bird, and it's just...
Yeah, or even just the monsters.
We don't even know what to call them.
I don't think they had a name. I think they just were. So, yeah. It's just one of those things. You look at some of these costumes, and it's like, okay, I've seen you do better, so why aren't you doing better?
Yeah.
Even like in that episode, the Time Monster, they had the Minotaur. Is it the most convincing Minotaur in the world? No. But they had a decent looking, head, and they put that on David Prowse, and it worked out,
Yeah.
So, just there are ways of doing it, you know? Just figure out your limitations and work with them.
And again, the old king, what was his name?
It was like Didas or something?
Dylos or something like that. Yeah.
Dalius.
Dalius. His costume and the queen's costume and all the Greek costumes and the Greek set, again, just astoundingly good. And then you got, a guy in a bird suit.
Yeah. And not a very convincing bird. It was just like some cloth, some white cloth that they had like one thing of white linen and they just threw it on this guy and he flapped around. So, anywho, will we see any of that in this, or are we going to get decent monsters in this Carnival of Monsters? We will have to see. I guess the last thing to mention is that the Doctor got a new dematerialization circuit from the Time Lords. Right. And so he is now free to go wherever he wants in space and time. So,
let's see if he takes off.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and get right into this. Okay, that's a hard thing to start on. Now see, there's limitations in the budget and there's weird choices. Like putting all those balls on the top of her head.
First, his mental and nervous systems will be subjected to analysis.
Yes, of course. Now, one must deal with the aliens.
It's interesting how, because of the teeth, they have to over-enunciate.
Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, somewhere else...
Okay.
I guess it is a carnival.
He's the ringmaster, and she's the assistant.
And the 70s threw up on them? Oh, I guess that explains the things.
Well.
I would say probably Indian Ocean somewhere. It's headed for Singapore, and the guy was wearing a fez.
Well, fezzes are cool.
20 times around the deck is a mile. There, sir, we put our best feet forward.
So, the ship and this particular dialogue, I'd say 30s or 40s.
Well, I was gonna say, it feels like we stepped into an Indiana Jones movie.
Or an Agatha Christie novel.
Or both. There's a crossover.
Don't you think that young American chap was marvellous? Fred something.
Yeah, Fred Astaire probably 40s. Or late 30s. Although if it's 40s, they'd be in the war, so...
1926.
What's going on? A monster!
Oh, jeez.
What the juice is it?
It's a plesiosaurus. What? It's incredible. If this really is 1926, the plesiosaurus has been extinct for 130 million years.
Okay, well, that was quite the tone shift.
I'm wondering if they think the Loch Ness Monster is the plesiosaurus.
Who are these people?
Well, don't you know, Andrews?
They said they joined the ship at port side.
Stowaways, eh?
Stowaways.
Where have you been hiding?
You tell him, Uncle.
Meanwhile, at a different show...
So I'm thinking the machine malfunctions and is sending creatures back to 1926.
Maybe.
What? These?
Is this the only one?
There's nothing there.
You mean you can't see it?
Get into this cabin.
Maybe they're the monsters. They're in that machine with all the others.
2 days out from Bombay on June the 4th, 1926. The SS Bernice just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Disappeared on June the 4th. But according to that calendar, that's today.
Yes. Intriguing, isn't it?
Sonic screwdriver.
No, that only works on electronic luxury. We need something far more primitive.
Skeleton keys.
Well, they do fine if only we had any.
Allow me, Doctor.
Does she just have every key known to man?
The great Tsar, that Warlarian wrestler we met at the Interstellar exhibition. You've got a nerve ball passing that off.
Did the cook some Madrassi, Andrews?
I believe so, sir.
I find the Madrassi's a bit idle myself. Won't have them on the
You're
plantation.
in the loop.
So I must admit your fellow knows how to curry a chicken.
Ah.
Sundowner? Determined to finish this book before we reach Bombay.
We'll do that tomorrow.
Poor man will never finish that book.
Only another 2.
Can't we just leave?
Where's your scientific curiosity, Joe? Don't you want to know what's going on?
Not much, no.
What is it now?
Doctor!
What is it, Joe?
Oh no. Just ganked the TARDIS as easily as... Well, a bit easier, actually. That TARDIS is a bit smaller, so... Well.
Okay.
It's a very interesting story to start off with.
Yes, Mr. Holmes is doing some rather interesting stuff here.
Yeah.
I mean, sets it up one way, and then takes it a completely different way, and then somehow manages to combine the two.
Yeah, like, it really does seem... I was like, okay, there's got to be some way to connect this ship with, you know, the aliens and the Lermans. Well, I guess the Lermans are the aliens, so... and yeah, then you just start putting it all together. Like, wait a second, this is the collection of monsters. These are also the monsters, then.
Now,
Right.
I have to say, I've never heard of the Bernice, so I don't know if that's made up for this, but they did reference the Marie Celeste,
Yes.
which you'll recall, was it the Chase?
Yes.
Where the Doctor landed there briefly.
Yeah.
And
the Daleks.
The
were
Daleks landed, and they're what chased the crew off and left it floating out in the middle of the ocean.
there. Right. So, so yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if this one is real either. So, but it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting if we just sort of took just every time there's a ship disappearance, like, ooh, a Doctor Who episode. That'd be brilliant. So, it is also very interesting that these. I don't know what the main race is called that are they're bringing in the Lermans. Very interesting though that they would bring in these Lermans, these carnival folk, basically. But then I mean, it's so weird. It's like we're talking about the Loch Ness Monster and this ship and in this collection. And then we start talking about these political issues and stuff, and there's a lack of amusement going on, which again almost feels like that would be like an album of some sort.
Well, I had just a brief bit of the old Roman Empire, because they talk about the functionaries, who would be the plebeians, and how they're not working, and how, if you'll recall, the Roman emperor said, you know what we need? We need to keep the people entertained. So gave them free bread and had the gladiator fights at the Circus Maximus and the chariot races and things like that. So bread and circuses. And that seems to be what's underlying here. You've got a group of somewhat more intelligent, certainly capable of speech, whereas the functionaries weren't. But you've got a group of royals, and then you've got the plebeians.
Well,
What were they called? Patricians. You got kind of the patrician and plebeian split there, and then into the middle of it come these clowns who happen to have a machine that apparently plucks people from all over the universe, or whether it's animals or other things. Again, it's a fascinating. It makes you wonder, how does an author sit down and say, you know what, I've got this idea about a collector who has a whole bunch of people. Now that's a very common kind of thread in science fiction, but then to say, instead of just the ordinary people fighting their way out, freedom and all that sort of stuff, what if we bring in a girl who's literally half naked and a guy who's wearing basically a clown suit, and throw them into this mix? It's just, what was he smoking?
Yeah, it would be like, okay, we need to set up better relations with North Korea. Like, all right, send in YouTubers. Like, I don't know if I would send in like PewDiePie or anyone. And I say that on a YouTube video. Like, I wouldn't send us to North Korea either, So it's just a very strange, and also the fact that this is the first real like alien relation that this planet is starting. So yeah, it's just a very strange idea.
It does make you wonder though, because she mentioned when he handed off the President Zarb thing, that it was a fake. So maybe they invited themselves.
Yeah, that's
So
entirely
we
possible.
haven't gotten that far yet, but that could be when the president gets it. Goes, what's going on here? I didn't authorize this.
Yeah. Well, and also just the fact that they said that they spent their last credits on getting here, so maybe they're desperate to try to, I guess, break into an untapped market on this planet. Yeah. So, this very strange planet with, you have the intelligent gray dudes, and then you have the really dumb gray dudes.
Yeah, they seem to be completely mute because they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from not having the hair that the others have, I didn't see any kind of structural mouth for them either.
Yeah, so it's just like all around, like you could already do an entire episode just on these, this race and their like, two system like different people and stuff. Then you add in this carnival, which is already weird. Then you add in that they're con artist carnival people. Then you add a boat and the Loch Ness Monster in the middle of a box with the TARDIS in it. It's a very strange idea, and you're right. Like, who thinks of this? But hey, you want to talk about limitations? Giving way to creativity. That's pretty good right there. So
now, again, personally, I think the guy, can't remember what his name is, the Lerman guy.
I think it was like Vorg or something.
Vorg, yeah. His costume's a bit overdone.
Yeah.
But I understand, they're going for, alien huckster, and he's got the plastic bowler hat on, but all the big functioning things on his lapels, that's a bit much. But again, it doesn't really distract. Again, it's just me as a director saying I would tone that down a little bit, because when you look at it, it's just kind of distracting.
Yeah, so it's one of those. It's like, I guess you have to take a carnival, a carny outfit, which is already weird, and you have to put that in space, so you have to make it weirder, So yeah, it's very strange, but that's just a nitpick, really. Yeah. So I do realize now that I didn't get out the jar, but we haven't needed to use it so far. Yeah. So maybe we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll just leave it be.
Well, I did mention that if it was in the 40s, it would be during the war, so that would be a clunk right there.
That's a good point. Let me try to grab it.
Try not to fall over.
I got it. Ugh. Okay. There you go.
All right, so one for a World War II reference.
Yep. Alrighty.
These creatures are Tellurians, a species discovered in a distant galaxy. An even more interesting, though less amusing, form of life is the Ogron. They are of limited intelligence and are used as servants by some race called Daleks.
Oh, yeah. They brought the Ogrons back.
Hello? Oh, hello. Topping day, what? Absolutely splendid. Yes, 99 skidoo.
23 skidoo.
No.
Still sticking to that stupid story? I'm afraid so, old chap.
No.
Regret it, sir. I think
Well, it's weird to see him without his jacket.
I think I ought to warn you that I took lessons from John L. Sullivan himself.
Bare-fisted heavyweight boxer.
That's a bit different from what the Doctor normally uses. Well, he didn't say he passed the lessons, just that he took them. Never mind.
Wonder why Tellurians? They should just be Terrans. Or terrestrials.
I've been small enough to get inside one of these things before.
This is a very planet of giants.
It's fascinating. It's like walking around inside a wristwatch.
Interesting set, too.
Well,
And my assistant and I traveled all the way from Deimos, believing that we would be welcome on your noble planet.
That is your misfortune.
That track. This machine, this
so they're from the same place with the demons?
contains many
Oh,
alien creatures.
that's where they last were. Oh, they have Cybermen in there?
Some things need to be said. Zard disbanded the army, and now our only defense is that.
Feels like you get a bit of peace movement talk in there, too. Ah! Jeez! That's terrifying.
is a transmitter, it'll be disguised.
No, there's nothing in there. Only this.
What is it?
A bit of bric-a-brac, Your Worship. It was causing interference inside Circuit 3. I better put it back in the scope.
Uh-oh.
What do you call the creatures here?
The Drashiks. My little carnivores. Oh, they're great favorites.
Horrible
of the
little
children.
enemy. My little
They're
carnivores.
gnashing
Nuh.
and
Look!
Sandworms.
Nuh. They're really focusing on that too. Well, it's a brilliant design, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that looks really good. Like I could see that, and a guy in a rubber Godzilla suit fighting. You know, it's the 70s. It works out. You know, I do think that we're gonna really, really enjoy this episode. You
Yes.
know, because this is really interesting, just all the way around interesting, and we're gonna sit on this, and I'm gonna upload the video, and then we're going to learn it's one of the worst, apparently. And I don't want to just bring that up, you know, to put down any commenters or anything, but it's just I feel like it's one of those things because this honestly, it's a really good story.
Yeah.
Like this is
As long as they don't not follow the premise in the next 2 episodes.
yeah, we still have to see where it goes, but I mean, already for a 4-parter, it's already tighter than most stories.
Yeah.
So
Very similar, in fact, to the War Games. Not about the overall arc of the story, but there you've got the Romans, you've got the Civil War, and you've got the World War I people and all that sort of thing. So here you've got the Doctor and Joe literally crawling through all these different places inside the machine.
yeah, but even that kind of similar to the War Games, although the characters are very different. Just the whole sort of conflict between Vorg and his assistant, and then the gray dudes. They still don't have a name, which is
As far as I
interesting.
know, maybe you should roll the credits to see if they're called anything specific.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got individual names.
Yeah, so Ian Martyr.
Oh yeah, that's the guy that wrote the novelization that I read.
Yeah, he plays was it Harry Sullivan, a 4th Doctor companion. All right. Well, the problem is I can't tell which one of those was which. So yeah, but I don't know the species name for them.
Yeah.
But even just the conflict between them kind of reminds me a bit of what was the Time Lord's name in the War Games? Was it the Warlord or was it?
Yeah, I think just the Warlord.
Yeah, I think so.
Or wasn't he the no, the Warlord was the
was he, or was that the
guy who was in charge?
Yeah, I can't.
The
Yeah,
guy that
there
looked
were.
like the Masters, not the Warlord.
Wait, there was the War Chief and then the Warlord.
Yeah.
So I think the Time Lord was the War Chief. That was it. So I mean, just the conflict between the War Chief and the Warlord, it's very different here between Vorg and the other the gray guys, but still, it's that sort of similar thing. And then honestly, you can kind of look at this and you can almost immediately start to think, well, here's the sort of backwards aliens that, you know, they have their mute slaves or whatever and their no amusement and stuff. And then you have, here's the human-looking dudes that are here to bring fun and stuff. But I like how we've pretty much reversed it. I'm more rooting for the gray dudes because, honestly, it's like, yeah, okay, they probably have their own problems on their own planet, but they're looking at this like, okay, our technology is not good. We don't have an army anymore. You know, I'm starting to see some similarities or some commentary on our world and stuff. And, you know, we don't have that. We're trying to do peace, but that's not really a good option and stuff. And we have to deal with these guys and their transmitters. Maybe they have spies. At the very least, they did smuggle, you know, organic life forms, which is not good. Yeah. So
I'm wondering if because there's just this, again, faint hint of commentary in the late 60s. And, well, actually it started, I think, in the 50s and went through the 60s into the early 70s of this international peace movement where, you know, they were literally trying to get everybody to disarm. And people kept saying, look, the idea of a peaceful world is, you know, it's a great idea, but there are simply bad people. And they're going to take advantage of, you know, if you disband your army, you know, and everybody tries to live peacefully, there's always going to be that one guy who says, well, now that everybody's disarmed, I can use my technology or the force of my will to take over the planet.
Yeah, that was a plot of a Pokemon game, actually. That literally was, where there was one of the evil teams. They had this whole message about, you know, you're treating your Pokemon, you know, unfairly and stuff, and they were like championing Pokemon rights and release them into the wilds where they belong. That way, we'll still have Pokemon and we can take over the world. So yeah, it is sort of like that, and it's one of those things where it's like, yes, peace is, you know, great and everything, but there is a part of me that is sort of like, we'll keep that in reserve on the off chance you don't know what's going to happen. I guess maybe it's better to be prepared than not, but at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, that would be great if we could all just sort of, you know, lay down everything. Superman comes, takes all the nukes, and throws them into the sun like Superman 4, you know, and then that would be great to an extent. But even in that movie, Superman throws all the nukes into the sun, and that gives way to Nuclear Man, you know? Go watch Superman 4. It sucks.
Oh, it's awful.
It's pretty bad, but...
It's not pretty bad. It is atrocious. It's irredeemable.
But it is hilarious. So, it's far more memorable than Superman 3. All I remember about Superman 3 is that it has Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And that's it. So, anywho, we're watching Doctor Who. All in all, just so far, we're only 2 episodes in, but so far it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, having fun with it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's not screw it up there. And again, somewhat misleading title, but yeah, what else are you going to call it?
Yeah. Like, it's not really focused... I figured there would be a Carnival of Monsters, and it's like there is, but we're focusing on everything outside of the carnival.
What was that? Oh, the graboids.
Yeah.
From Tremors. Carnivorous caterpillar.
I mean, this thing looks like it could be on Tatooine.
Horrible thing. Why didn't it attack us?
Maybe it's friendly.
Miss Joe, there's more than one of those things about Joe. Let's go.
I do really want to watch some Godzilla movies now.
Ah, escape.
I remember those kinds of heaths. We don't have things like that here in the southern Great Plains.
Oh, no.
I can't.
Well, luckily, she's got the boots for it.
We're nearly there.
Oh, this is getting out of hand. Now there are 3 of them.
Oh, he ignited the gas.
Oh, okay. Well, good job.
Of course, she's in the middle of it. He could have ignited the gas.
He only ignited what was in front of them.
No good, not gas.
I never noticed.
Oh, yeah. That's how he does it. No buttons. I feel bad for Jo. She had her jeans completely rolled up, and she still got wet.
As a matter of fact, I had a great deal to do with the banning of these miniscapes.
So,
You did?
Yes, I did. I managed to persuade the High Council of the Time Lords they were an offense against the dignity of sentient life forms.
I
wow.
thought the Time Lords never interfered.
That's all they don't, as a rule. But frankly, I made such a nuisance of myself. Well, they banned the things.
Wow.
Here
Now I'm
we
beginning
are,
to wonder
all
if this was
cosily wrapped up with the other
actually
specimens.
inspired by the RSPCA, the
Will we?
Royal Society
Seems
for
to
the
me we have a
Prevention of
choice
Cruelty
of
to
being
Animals.
shot by those idiots on the
maybe.
ship. Doctor!
Come on, Joe. Time we got out of here.
I mean, they can't get through that little hole, can they?
Wouldn't think so unless they break the whole wall down.
The whole thing. Never mind.
The Tellurians will try to escape.
And?
The Drashings will follow them.
What good will that do any of us?
Listen, Norm. For thousands of years, ever since the Great Space Plague, Our world has stood alone and been the stronger for it.
Space plague.
Zaab is trying to change.
Can we have an episode about that?
Because the...
Well, that's not good. Kick it.
The New Zealand Jiu-Jitsu not going to do much good this time.
So where does the Loch Ness come from? Is it a Drashing too? Oh, is that the captain? You know, there was a part of me in the back of my mind when they said go to the captain. I thought the master, knowing with 100% certainty it wouldn't be.
President Zaab has granted...
Well, maybe the ship will reset too.
The generators were built by the old Eternity Perpetual Company. They're designed to last forever. That's why the company went bankrupt.
They're still dropping. The power's still dropping, Orc.
What are you doing?
Wish I knew. Routine maintenance, Your Worship.
Well, he made it. Okay.
Well, this is, again, very, very much like what Spielberg and Lucas would do a couple of years later. It's a very tense situation, but infused with humor.
Yeah.
You know, that's why Indiana Jones and all the rest of these were so successful, is because they were not deadly serious, but that's kind of self-deprecating humor, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely. I still want to know more about this space plague that they mentioned. I mean, honestly, just I like it. It's definitely good world building. Just the odd in and out references they do. It's like, oh, that was made by the Eternal Battery Company. They're meant to last forever, which is why they went bankrupt. It's like that's great. I want to know about that. I just want to know about all this stuff, you know. So it's stupid world building like that I kind of like, where it's like, let's have just a company in space. What's that like? There's an episode with the 13th Doctor where they basically have Amazon in space, and they like go into the I guess the conveyor belt lines and stuff, and you see where all the packages go and stuff. It's incredibly stupid, but I really do enjoy stuff like that. So, now the whole thing with the rebellion, it took me a second to understand what they were saying. So they want to release the Drashings to cause havoc, and because that causes havoc, there'll be an uprising against the president because he allowed them to be here in the first place.
They made a movie similar to this in the late 90s, I think, based on an old saying. The movie was called Wag the Dog, and it's about a president who is confronted by a scandal, doesn't know how to get out of it, so he decides he's going to start a war to take everybody's attention off of his problems and instead focus on how do we defeat this, drummed up enemy. So that's what they're kind of doing here. Because they don't like the president and his peaceful aspirations, they're going to unleash the Kraken, basically, start the war, and then when the people will see how ineffective the President Zarb is, then Kalik will become their new leader by defeating the Drashig.
Right. Which is very, very interesting. Again, just... I mean, it's one of those where it's like, it's almost a shame there's only one more episode. That's what it always turns out to be, is that when we get episodes that are more than 6 parts, we think, wow, that could have been cut to 4. And then when we get one that's 4, it's like, well, geez, I wish this was a bit longer, you know? Like, I'm just very fascinated by these different cultures and stuff, and as well as the monsters they have in there. So, and of course, now it seems like they've killed... Did they kill all the Drashings, or was it just one?
I thought they had killed 2.
It might have been 2. So, of course, there is still the question of the Loch Ness that was there, because that, if the Drashings are in their own, environment, why is there a Loch Ness that pops up at the boat every so often? So,
and the girl, Sherma, I think that's what her name is.
Yeah, I think so.
She said that there's about 20 of these Drashings altogether.
Yeah, and we only saw 3 that were on screen, so... So yeah, it'd be interesting if we see more of that. Or, I mean, I guess that's still more that can be unleashed for this rebellion plot, so...
The tribunal is deliberating. The tribunal is not deliberating. The tribunal is arguing. Quite nonsensically, if I may say so.
So,
The tribunal will
politics.
not tolerate insolence. To rescue my young companion and give what help I can to the rest of the unfortunates trapped in here, then I am prepared to overlook the entire matter.
One is indeed overwhelmed.
If not,
We will conceal it in the Lerman's baggage. Then if anything should go wrong, one of us can always discover it.
Of course. Blame it on the Lerman.
An alien spy.
Oh, there's the title. Blame it on the Lermans.
No.
Yes, but is it not possible that one might oneself become part of that disaster?
There is a certain minimal risk.
One has no wish to be devoured by alien monstrosities,
No.
even in the cause of political progress. They will never break through those plates. They're malectic bonded dissilon.
Then perhaps one had better give them a little help.
I mean, even at like that small of size, I feel like if that bites your ankle, it's gonna hurt. And then they get bigger.
Of course, you could just step on them. They're, after all, just worms.
That's also true.
phase 1. What? Stop!
Oh, bye.
Well, I'm doing my
The
best.
doctor's relying on us.
Well, put your finger on there a minute, will you?
Here? Whoa!
Good, that must be the live terminal. I haven't seen one of these since my national service days. The old 14th heavy lasers. Oh, what an outfit. Our battery sergeant was a crustaceoid mercenary.
Borg! The power's almost down to critical. Is the phase 2 switch ready?
Oh, well, that's a problem. Oh, they're gonna be heroes.
Well, I reversed the original settings and linked them to the TARDIS, so they should still be on the ship.
But back in 1926 in the Indian Ocean.
Yes, exactly.
Yay. You finally finished the book.
Be great if his book was H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
No.
One can hardly discount the evidence of one's eyes.
Oh, you're unlucky.
One was obviously too hasty.
No.
One will not make the same mistake a second time.
Another little wager?
5 credit bars. No, 10.
Whatever you say, Pletrak. Thank you. You know,
This
I
peaceful
like it.
society will be
You remind me
addicted
of
to
the
gambling.
Warriors, you know, they're great.
Alrighty. That's the Carnival of Monsters.
Well, again, except for the title, thoroughly enjoyable. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I mean, very serious story, but handled with humor.
Yeah, definitely. Now it's interesting we didn't really cut back to was it Calic and Orem?
Yeah.
So I guess their whole political revolution has been thwarted by a laser of some variety.
Well, remember he said that he had his old laser from his old unit, and he stuck that in to the Eradicator and killed the Drashings that way.
Yeah. Thank goodness that was compatible with their Eradicator and everything, but it all works out. Of course, there's also the whole thing of, well, they did all the smuggling and this, the miniscope is banned, and let's just forget about that. So, alrighty. Well, to jump into the notes, I mean, the first thing I wrote down are the Lermans and the Carnival. Just a very interesting... I mean, I guess the Lermans themselves, they're probably not all, Carnival folk. It's just these two that are trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, and again, very much in the vein, we talked about this before, of Harry Mudd in Star Trek. And even, I mean, kind of in the, again, taking from this character, maybe even Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, just these gamblers, these, not quite as, big a showman as this guy is. But yeah, just that guy that says, hey, this is the way I make my life. I always, there's a sucker born every minute. Just, the P.T. Barnum character.
Yeah. He kind of reminds me... It kind of reminds me of the prospector guy from the Space Pirates.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess he was just sort of a pretty standard prospector. Like, there wasn't really anything too... as much like that as, a sort of con man or anything.
Yeah. I mean, it even goes back to, when you think about it, to The Wizard of Oz. Especially in the weird little prequel that they made, The Great and Powerful Oz.
Oh, yeah.
He turns out to be a huckster who gets caught there in Oz and then turns himself into the Great Wizard.
Yeah, that movie with James Franco from, that was like 10 years or so ago. Yeah. That was crazy. But yeah, I don't remember almost anything about that movie other than it's James Franco as the wizard.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it turns out that you initially think that the bad witch is one of the good witches and that Glenda is the bad witch, and then as the thing goes on, you find out that it's just the reverse, that Glenda is the good witch, and the other one turns out to be the green-faced Wicked Witch of the West.
Right. So, but yeah, so that was interesting, and then I do just like how for a little while, for like 10-15 minutes in the first episode, there is no connection. It's like, well, here's the Lermans and they're carnival people, and here's how they're trying to start relations with these gray dudes and stuff. And then cut to, well, the TARDIS has landed on a ship in the middle of the Indian Ocean in 1926, and you sit here and you're like, okay, what are we doing? Why is this a thing? And then eventually you realize that, this ship is part of this miniscope, this carnival, basically, which is pretty interesting. And I guess the whole thing with the title, Carnival of Monsters, it's not really a carnival, but I guess you could almost say the reason it would be called that is because it's trying to sound more grand than it is. Yeah. Exactly like how they're trying to make this whole miniscope much grander than it really is.
Even like just Carnival of Mayhem or something like that. But the monsters makes you think, here we go, we're going to see. But the only real monsters were the Drashigs. Yeah. And they weren't in the entire thing. So to name the whole serial after them, it could have been better named, but it doesn't detract from what they did with it.
It's just a minor nitpick, really. Yeah. So, but yeah, now I'm still curious. They never explain the Loch Ness Monster in the Indian Ocean. Like, I assume that was a Drashig that just got caught in that part.
But it didn't, it did not look like one of the, carnivore caterpillars.
Yeah, and because they never showed any others, so presumably that entire species looks like those. But yeah, so why... Unless they're trying to say something that is like, we just happened to... For some reason, I don't know, I guess I've never been to the Indian Ocean, but I'm just going to assume that there's not a plesiosaur in the Indian Ocean.
Here be monsters.
Yeah, so... so that was weird, but it was an interesting sort of, first sign of things being off on this boat.
Yeah, and I think as part of the overall viewing experience, it was just to let the people watching this show how the apparent Earth people are completely taken by surprise and are in fear and how they deal with it. But then, of course, every 15, 20 minutes it resets, so nobody's actually going to get harmed.
Yeah, so... let's see. Well, we did have the whole thing of the visa that they were trying to get accepted and stuff. The forgery from President Zarb. Now, it's interesting. They talk about the forgery, which is how they were able to get there. But President Zarb, who we never see in this serial, but he seems to be open to this sort of stuff. Like, it almost seems like he knew that they were coming. Yeah. So I'm curious, and maybe that's just splitting hairs. What are the technicals of this? But they have a visa that they're trying to get accepted, and they have a recommendation from the president that was forged, and they bought it with their last credits to get here. but they seem to be welcome to an extent because they are trying to set up peaceful relations in the galaxy and stuff. So I'm like trying to figure out, it's like, well, if they are trying to set up peaceful relations, did you need to spend your last money to get here? Or were they trying to set up peaceful relations with the actual representatives of the Lermans, and instead the Carney folk got here first?
That could be.
Yeah. That would actually have been funny if the actual like representatives of the Lermans showed up at the end. And they're like, oh, who are you supposed to be? And then they hightailed it out of there.
Yeah.
So, but I guess that'd be very Curse of Peladon too. So, and we had the whole thing of the miniscope, which smuggles in, which already smuggling in, animals and stuff like, or just living organisms, which is already illegal, especially to the gray dudes. And then on top of that, the miniscope itself being banned. Now here's another thing I'm trying to figure out the technicals of, is that the Time Lords banned that. But the way the Doctor says it, it almost makes it sound like the Time Lords like rule over the universe. Which, I mean, they are kind of the only beings that have anything to do with time other than the Daleks, and obviously the Daleks would love to conquer the universe. But just the way the Doctor says that, unless, like, I'm trying to figure out the ins and outs of this galaxy. Like, is it just this galaxy? Is the whole universe? Or did maybe the Time Lords are like this influence to all governments of like, hey, they're like the Federation, with everything. It's like we have all the individual things here, but we also have the Time Lords, and if they say you should ban something, maybe you probably should. Yeah. So it's something that I'm putting too much thought into. Yes. I shouldn't put too much thought into. And the point is, it's banned by the Time Lords. And I did like that whole thing. I mean, I guess the Doctor even says, the Time Lords don't interfere. They don't normally do this. But he made such a big fuss about it that that the Time Lords did intervene with the universe. So I guess it could just be that. So, but that's very, very interesting. And it is also interesting, the whole thing of, you go through like, well, here's, all these different species. They brought back, what was it, the Ogrons or something from Day of the Daleks, which is interesting. And they also show they have a Cyberman in there, which is interesting. I'm pretty sure then that's probably the only appearance of the Cybermen for the Third Doctor. Like, he never, in his own era at least, he never encounters the Cybermen. But then it's, instead of humans, it's Tellurians, which is interesting. Like, where does that name come from? I'm curious.
Yeah.
So,
because again, if anything, they would be Terrans or terrestrials.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tellurians, or whatever it was. That doesn't come from any kind of nomenclature that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Which, I mean, there is also the case that the Lermans seem to be another form of humans, but I guess presumably they're from Lerma, the planet Lerma, I guess. So, I guess it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, what would be, like, the root planet name, I guess, for Tellurians. I don't know. It is just such a strange thing that they don't just go with humans, but oh well.
But again, humans kind of denotes a humanoid, and they're obviously the gray guys and the Lermans are humanoid.
Yeah.
So again, if you're specifically trying to pinpoint Earth, generically speaking, we would be from this terrestrial ball, so we would be terrestrials. That's why we have extraterrestrials, people who are not from this planet. But I always told my students that it was either the Latins or the Greeks that had the name of our sun is not the sun. We call it the sun because it is our sun, but its actual name was Sol, and that our moon is not just the moon, it's Luna, which means that our planet would be Terra, as you go to terra firma, which is dry land or firm land, and so we would then be Terrans.
Yeah. Which
Terranians, I guess, at the worst. Which
have to be three of the most uncreative names we've ever come up with as a species. What do we call the sun? Sol. What does it mean? Sun. What about the moon? Luna. What does it mean? Moon. what about the Earth? Terra. What does that mean? Earth. Like, great job. You really, like, at least out here we got the Lermans from, Lerma, I guess. So, yeah, that...
I'm sure we're going to get all sorts of comments on that. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the big jokes that I used to tell in my world history class. You probably remember. It's like when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. He renamed their river there. We still to this day, I don't think, know what the real name, what the Egyptians called it. Because when Alexander came in, he said, we shall call this Nilos. And the Egyptians were like, oh, that's really great. What does that mean? It literally means river. So, if you call it the Nile River, you're theoretically calling it the River. The same thing, the Indus River, in the language of that time period, Indus literally means, it comes from the word Sindhu, which means river.
Yeah.
Alexander says, I shall call this land between the Tigris and the Euphrates Mesopotamia. And Ray goes, ooh, what does that mean? It's the land between the two rivers.
Yeah, I guess you'll never forget about it. So, like, I guess if you go basic, it makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, we're not criticizing, but we're commenting on the Tellurians. I guess that at least is something marginally creative. Yeah. So, let's see. But we had the whole thing about the Eradicator and the peace and the possibility of, are these spies? Maybe we need to start a rebellion to get rid of the peaceful President Zarb, which is interesting. And yeah, just like this whole thing, like you probably could have done an entire episode just on the Grey Dudes, but then adding in the Lermans and then the miniscope and everything, just sort of it's extra stuff you didn't have to do. But it does actually work to have all that in there. Yeah. So I do like that, and yeah, honestly, I can see different sort of commentaries with the Grey Dudes, like we're becoming too peaceful and stuff. We need some sort of a war, So I did like all of that, and it is also hilarious to think that maybe they're spies, and then you go and look at Vorg, and it's like, is that guy a spy? I don't know. But then I thought, well, it would be a perfect disguise. Yeah. Make yourself look incompetent so they don't suspect you. So, I don't know, maybe one of Shurna's antennas she had on her, the little thing she had on her head, maybe one of those was a transmitter of some sort. So, and of course, I also like when, the TARDIS gets out of there and grows to full size. It's like, oh, that must be a communications device. And it's like, well, there is a phone right at the front, so he rarely uses it, but it is there. So technically they're not wrong. Let's see. Definitely great designs on the Drashings. Like, especially because we started out this episode talking about the terrible designs of the, Pizza the Hut dudes and Kronos from the last couple episodes, and to suddenly get that, which obviously it's not a giant costume. It's it must have just been a puppet that they scaled up, and then I'm sure for some of those shots they did green screen and put it in later. Yeah. But honestly, that it did work out. Like, it was a very interesting design, and yeah, I could see movies where Godzilla and Mothra team up and maybe Jet Jaguar's there and they have to defeat these things, So they were really good. I like them. And even just, you only see the head of presumably the Loch Ness Monster, but even that was really, really good. Yeah. So, and even like for the costumes for, the Grey Dudes, you can kind of see like around the eyes, you can see in the mouth, you can kind of see where the paint sort of stops because they can only go so far. But it was fine; it wasn't distracting or anything. Yeah. Even the what did they call the mute ones? Didn't they have a name?
Yeah. Can't remember what they were called though.
Yeah, I don't remember. But even them, like, you can kind of see like, well, the functionaries, like, well, let's take, this design and let's make it a bit different. So they almost had like a bulkier suit, and they had a more like, almost like kind of a melted face, honestly, to make them look, I guess, maybe less sophisticated. But even they look pretty good. Yeah. So,
The Grey Dudes remind me a little. You just talked about them last week or the week before, when they were mining for molybdenum.
The Sensorites.
Sensorites.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it had the little fringe of hair around the back, but bald on top, and the Sensorites were, I guess, more pale, putty faced.
Yeah. So, and even that was also a sort of second in command going against the leader and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely similar to that. And I guess we did get the name of this planet, which was Interminor. So maybe they're the intermediaries.
Interminals.
There you go. Yeah, they're the internals. There you go. Other than that, I mean, some of the other stuff, I like just the Doctor coming in and, they're all sort of questioning him, and it's like, oh, well, you're a lesser species. Why are we answering all your questions? And he just doesn't care, and he just keeps going and keeps talking. He's like, oh, well, you're all in, a great deal of trouble and stuff. So,
well, they are very much people who follow the rules. Remember all of the talk at the very beginning, they're talking about, we cannot do this without proper protocols. And so the Doctor simply says, look, you want protocols? Let me lay down. You may talk about protocols on your planet, but we have some galactic protocols and universal protocols, which you are in violation of. So he basically just turns that back on them.
Yeah. Well, and I would also wonder, because they were the ones that mentioned, smuggling organic life forms and stuff, even in such a small container, is illegal. I'm curious, though, because it sounds like this is one of their first sort of, meetings with another species. Not that they haven't met before, but they're really starting to, start interstellar relationships and everything now that they are in this new era of peace. So I'm curious, like, how long have they done that? Do they know too much about intergalactic law? Like, it does sort of remind me of Curse of Peladon, where it's like, yes, we're entering the Galactic Federation and stuff. Actually, that'd have been hilarious if the delegate from Alpha Centauri showed up at the end here. So yeah, maybe, like, honestly, like, everything with Interminor and the Grey Dudes and then the Functionaries, they honestly, you could have gotten an entire episode just about them, and that would have been interesting enough. And then throwing in all of this with the Lermans, honestly, I guess just sort of expands everything, and has this great world building, even if it's just a dumb throwaway line of like, yes, that's why that company went bankrupt and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just very interesting how this all has just come together, and really made a very solid episode.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, so if any of you say that this is not a good episode, I'm not going to do anything about it, but I don't know. We'll toss in a coin for you if you say this is not a good episode. So, but I really enjoyed it.
I did too.
Yeah.
What's up next?
Let's see. Up next is Frontier in Space. They're getting very vague with their titles now. Yeah. Between these and like the Time Monster, like it's just, I don't know, not really getting much from that. But anyway,
now see the Time Monster, they could have called that the Time Eater.
Yeah.
Or just they could have called it Kronos. It makes you wonder if the people who are naming the serials taking the suggestions of the people who are writing it, because that Robert Holmes could have come up with a better title than Carnival of Monsters.
Yeah. You know what I almost wonder? It would be very interesting if it was like, if they had it to where it was like in the older Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, where J. Jonah Jameson just comes up with a headline. It's like, all right, now go write that headline. Like maybe they do that. Maybe they have one person who's like, okay, think of an interesting title, and they think Carnival of Monsters. All right, Bob, go write that. You get 4 episodes, and it's like, okay. And he's like, okay, a Carnival of Monsters. Do I put this in space? This is just coming off the 3 Doctors, so the Doctor gets to go back into space. Okay, so a carnival, but is it just a carnival? And he puts in all of this, and this is what he comes up with. So
it'll be interesting too to see if this kind of not bickering, but this back and forth between Dr. the Doctor and Joe about, I thought you said you can control this thing. And he said, no, I can program it. Well, he obviously didn't program it correctly because it didn't land anywhere, even in the same galaxy as where he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are we going back to setting the stage again like we did with Hartnell, where he can't really, I mean, he can program it, but where it lands, nobody knows.
Yeah. I think it is supposed to be at this point, for the first time in 10 years, he can control the TARDIS to go somewhere specific that he wants. But maybe what it'll establish is that, well, yes, I can program it to go wherever I want. And on a good day, you know, if she's in the right mood, she'll actually take me there. Otherwise, she takes me where she wants me to go, you know? Yeah. It could be that. And I will say, just from this episode, just the chemistry between the Doctor and Joe, I thought was really, really good.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Joe may be becoming one of my favorite companions. Just her interactions and her quips and everything have just been really good.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, this has been over 2 hours of us talking because that's what happens when you throw in another episode to these videos. They just really go long. So, but anyway, next one I believe is a 6-part. So we'll break that one up again.
All right.
But yeah, that is pretty much it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for another Doctor Who series that we do on the channel, one of like 10. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.